Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms Chats, where I've been doing live videos for a while to help families understand distance learning and how different schools are going back to school. And as pretty soon campuses will start reopening. And we have a new post on the blog today about Anne Frank Inspire Academy and their reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year. And our guest today on Charter Moms Chats is Justin Johnston, who's the head of school at Anne Frank. And Justin, thank you for coming back on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. It's always great to talk to you, and what you've built over the last couple of years is very impressive, and I know you're well respected among the community, and so I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come on and talk about it.
Well, thank you. And Justin was a guest over the summer. He shared a post. It was part of our summer learning activities. It was about when your kids ask lots of questions, how you can channel into that to make learning that's relevant and really engaging for them. And it was a really good an introduction to kind of the learning model at Anne Frank. And so I encourage everybody, in the description of the video, there's a link to the new blog post today, which is the one that it's kind of my summary about the Anne Frank Inspire Academy reopening plan. But in that post, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link to the post about inquiry-based learning that Justin wrote over the summer. So thank you for being part of our summer learning project there. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from families who felt like that helped them with learning at home and for keeping their kids engaged. So thank you. So I wanted to dive in and talk about the reopening plan. And I think one of the things so I have my printout of it right here. So anyone who goes to the Anne Frank website, pop up right here. Yeah. So if anybody wants to see the fine print, read it themselves, if you go to the Anne Frank website, which is here on the screen, and it comes up as a pop-up right away, so you can't miss it. And we also link to it in the blog post. So, but a really key part on page 2, we talk about the purpose and the mission for Anne Frank, which is to do things differently. And the phrase specifically is to reimagine education. And so I was wondering if you could talk about reimagining education and how that applies during the pandemic and how that applies to the reopening plan.
Yeah, and so like you said, we had the privilege of having that post during the summertime that talks about how you handle questioning, and that's really I think I said in that opportunity that we had that reimagining education to us really means doing what comes naturally, which is taking that natural wondering and structuring it in a way that we teach kids how to learn regardless of where they are or the setting that they're in, right? And so one of the things that is so unique about our world is we put kids in a very structured environment in schools, then they go to college and they get a different environment, and then we are doing all of those things to prepare them for a workplace that's completely different than what high school and elementary was compared to college, right? And so we know that seasons happen in people's lives, and we really want to equip our students with the ability to survive any season and then thrive in it through learning where that comes from. So what reimagining education to us means that, be it in a normal season or in a pandemic or social unrest, whatever it is, we turn around and we figure out how do we thrive inside of this current season and continue our learning process.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so I wanted to ask, so in the reopening plan, okay, so clearly flexibility and adaptability are part of the model as in terms of reimagining education. And I think that really comes through in terms of the instructional options that Anne Frank is offering to families. So you talk about in the document, there's 4 different instructional plans that families can choose from. And there's a process where they make that selection of which model they want for the upcoming week. So I was wondering if you could talk about what the 4 instructional options are and why you designed it that way to have that level of flexibility.
So the purpose behind the flexibility is quite simple. We want to be logical in our approach. And the fact is right now, there's a lot of unknown. And so to build systems that don't allow for unknown is not logical, right? Which is what we're trying to be. So we know that families are going to have different needs, and each family is going to have a different need. And then that need inside of that family may change based off of what is going on. And so we want to give that weekly choice. And we do have 4 options. Those 4 options are for remote only. That option is there for families that A, have the luxury to provide that to their kids, and then B, are really concerned about the safety aspect of it. The safest place that a kid can be right now is at home. We're not going to argue that piece of it, right? The second option that we have is a Tuesday, Thursday. So some families say, hey, we have the opportunity to keep our kids at home for a majority of the time, but we also know there's a huge benefit for the social interaction that happens at school. And then the truth of the matter is, the more I'm in front of a facilitator, right? Research has shown over and over again that teachers, which we refer to as facilitators, are what makes a difference in a child's education. And so for those that want that 2-day a week, we are going to provide that. And then a 4-day a week option, a Monday through Thursday. And, we had a really, really flexible plan until the state came out and said, hey, when we told y'all could do what you need to do to take care of your kids, we really didn't mean that. We meant to do it a little bit different. And we had to change a couple of things in there. And so our wording changed. Our plan didn't change. Our wording changed in that way. And so we have a Monday through Thursday plan. And that is, again, to give families the opportunity to get their kid in front of our facilitators as much as possible. And then our 4th and final plan is a Monday through Friday plan. And what we had originally wanted to do is for Fridays to be remote. And there was a couple of different reasons of our facilitators, they need to be supported. And one of the things that we need to do is, as important as I say it is for facilitators to be in front of kids, it's also equally as important that they're well prepared and well planned. And so we've got to support that planning, and we've got to support that preparation. And so our Fridays will be a remote on campus. Every other day that students are on campus, Monday through Thursday, that is not going to be the same thing that kids are doing remotely. It'll be the same activities, but it's not going to be coming to school and just sitting on a computer and people walking around and supporting and helping. There's going to be real school that's going to be taking place. And that's one of the things that we're hearing quite a bit is that places are opening, but they're not really opening, right? And so I want to be clear that when we say we're opening September 8th, we're truly opening on that side. And so those are our 4 options. And then the month of December, right? We were planned to be straight remote that month of December. We had to change that plan. But we are going to encourage families that during the month of December, if you can go remote, to go remote. Because we know that cold flu seasons are going to be up. We know that our facilitators are going to come down with symptoms that we're going to have to be prepared for. We know there's just going to be a lot of discomfort that's going on during that December season that we want to be on the front end. And so when we say Fridays remote or December remote, those are just encouragements. We will always have our school open. We will always have a place for kids to come. But we do want to try to work together as a community and the best we can.
Yeah, some thoughts on what you said. It sounds like on Friday, it's right. That's the day when it's sort of like, well, I guess what I'm reading about other places is like there's what they call these learning center options where like they'll open the building, they'll bring kids in, they'll space them out, but they're basically sitting at a computer kind of doing what they would do at home, but it's a way to provide, some childcare, maybe some more stable Wi-Fi, if there's families that don't have devices or stable internet at home, if there's no adult to supervise the children at home, like the learning center may be safer than that, but it probably does, it won't have the learning benefit, like what you're talking about, of like having the facilitator with the student, and what research has shown of the benefits the student get from having an adult who's guiding them as they're doing their learning. So, and I think what, like you said, wanting to take a logical approach to this, right? And to make sure that the school is delivering a high quality education, that the learning center approach it may be more convenient for the school in terms of, because it makes what's being delivered on campus and what's being delivered via distance learning more similar. But it's not giving the on-campus students, the real benefit of working with a facilitator. Is that fair?
Around, right? When we really look at it, if you're going to take, and I'm going to use the word risk, right? But if you're going to take the calculated risk of sending your kid to school, then we owe you the commitment to ensure that we're giving you the best education that we can. And so that's another part that we want to be transparent about is, in our K to third grade, students will be placed in small groups of pods, right? In which those pods of 4 will be social distanced, so that if there is exposure, it's only exposing a small number of students and not exposing the entire class, right? But 4th grade to 12th grade, we will have students that will be wearing masks full time. And those masks, when reason that we're doing that is we're going to have a very difficult time social distancing students at the upper levels. And again, we have to be logical on that side of it. And so when we're saying you're going to wear a mask, well, what happens naturally is that social distancing drops down because of the fact that you got teenagers, and and people can turn around and they can say all they want to, but there's reality behind it. Now, what we really want to get across to our teenagers is being shoulder to shoulder to somebody is completely different than being arm's distance. So while we may not be requiring that 6 feet at all times, right, we still want you to have your own natural space. And we want to kind of start teaching that side of it. But when you walk in the door here at Anne Frank, we're going to be committed to making sure that you have an education that you're going to be proud of, and that's going to be worth your time, energy, and effort to come to school. And just like you're saying, some parents may want to keep their kid at home and they just don't have the option to, because they may have a first grader and they may both be working and they just may not have anybody that can provide that environment for them. And so at that point in time, we want to make sure that we're taking care of them the best that we possibly can as well.
Right. Yeah. Being realistic about which families can work from home and which families really need, like childcare support. Because there's so many elements to this. But like you said, you just have to approach it logically and kind of, break down each piece and figure out how those schools can support the families, how to make it a high quality education, and make the plan flexible enough so that, because we really don't know what's coming down the road, right? There's a lot of uncertainty about December because that's typically when cold flu season happens, and there may be a lot of people showing symptoms who don't actually have coronavirus, but they'll have to be self-screening, right? They might keep themselves home, or they might show up and then there's the temperature check and they might have a fever, but it might not be coronavirus, or so there's just a lot of uncertainty. One thing that the plan talks about is that, okay, so a lot of what I've seen has been schools kind of choosing where a family makes a choice by grading period, like whether it's a quarter or some other grading period, and then that's the unit of a family choosing the instructional model, as far as on campus, off campus. But at Anne Frank, it's actually it's like a Thursday, Friday option. I don't know. So can you explain more how that works? Like, how does that work with the facilitators and their planning? And because this is something I think that's kind of unique and interesting.
Yeah. So again, the reason that we're asking families or encouraging families to go remote on Fridays is to provide that planning time for our facilitators. Well, if our facilitators are planning for that next week on Fridays, then as long as we know how many kids we're going to have Friday morning by 7:00, we can plan and be prepared for that next week. So when you start talking about being at 6 weeks, and I always want to have these conversations and never be critical, because every school is different, right? And we're a school that's built off of being a community. We're a school that's built off of being small in the number of students that we have, because we want that connectivity. And so that allows us the flexibility to really take care of our families. And we're not dealing with 1,600 kids or 1,700 kids inside of a building, right? Each one of our buildings will always only have a max of 150 students in it. So when you think that some people are going to be going remote anyway, we want to turn around and allow those parents that weekly flexibility. For example, you may, just like you brought up, you may have a symptom that you think is COVID, and it's not. Well, you shouldn't be stuck out of school for 6 weeks, and just because of the fact that something like that took place. Um, we have people that are nervous about coming back, rightfully so, and they may not walk in the door on September 8th. But if they decide September 25th they want to walk back in the door, they should have the option to come back in the door. Now, we of course can't do that day by day, and we have to be
Right.
logical about that piece, but we can do it week by week. And anybody that sits down and tells me that as a school, you know what you're going to be doing for the 6 weeks out, right? Like, we have our syllabus plan for that long, but day to day we can adjust. So what we're asking families to do is let us know each week, and if they don't let us know, then our assumption is going to be that they're carrying on with what they had before. So some families are going to go all year remote, and we'll support that. Some families may go 2 or 3 weeks remote right now, and then say, hey, look, there hadn't been a case, or it hasn't been as what we thought it was going to be. Let's go ahead and we'll dive in. But we truly believe that we should offer the option to families to take care of their families, and to do what's in the best interest of their kids.
Yeah, that's what educational choice is about. It's like, it's not just choosing like which school to enroll your kids in, but it's also like, how do you want the education delivered to your kids, and making it responsive
Correct.
to what families want. So I really want to celebrate that. I'm really glad that that's part of the model. So one thing I wanted to touch on in the plan is how attendance and grading are working a little different. So like for attendance, obviously if a student chooses face-to-face, at 10 a.m., it's like they're there, right? but if they're choosing like a hybrid or remote option, then on the days when they're not on campus, there's different ways that they can sort of demonstrate that they're online. And then as far as grading, about how it's like sort of mastery or competency based. So I think those are really interesting aspects about like sort of what's different about Anne Frank, and the kind of flexibility of sort of like how to. Yeah, so if you could talk more about attendance and grading, about how those procedures are changing a little bit.
Yeah, so all honesty, attendance is going to be what you're going to hear a lot of people talking about. Attendance through remote learning is very difficult. It's very challenging, especially with the idea of measuring progress daily through the remote learning. And so I'm really interested to see how this conversation goes. But we do have multiple ways that students can do that. One way is through our just basic instructional strategies. Is we frame our lessons with an objective at the beginning of the day and a closing question of what kids should be able to answer. So our facilitators post that closing questions. If kids can answer that closing question, it gives us the feedback that they need to be able to say, yeah, we're moving forward. The other way is just a traditional assignment that has to be completed, that kids can go in and complete that assignment. One of the things that makes it really challenging when you're doing asynchronous is those assignments are confusing, because we used to believe that every assignment was graded, right? And now when you're doing daily assignments for attendance purposes, it becomes really confusing to families about, hey, you have all of these assignments, but yet you only have 4 or 5 grades over here. What's going on with that piece? And so that's the challenge. That's the rub on that side. But to answer your question, let me just not go on a soapbox. To answer your question, it's going to be through that closing question. It's going to be through completing assignments. It's going to be we have each so at the lower grades in elementary, we have time designated that students can get on Teams and receive support. And then at the middle school and high school, the last 20 minutes of each one of the kids' natural periods of their schedule, our facilitators will be on Teams to answer and clarify what's taking place. They can also email their facilitators questions and let us know that they're engaged there. And so there's a lot of different ways for engagement to be shown. It's going to be interesting to see what the state responds to that as we go forward. Does that truly meet progress that they're wanting to be measured? And so we'll see some changes, I think, in the next couple of months over what attendance looks like. And then the other piece of your question about was our grading. And our grading, we have gone to a standard-based grading where we have really broken down our TEKS into what is it we want kids to know, and then what is it we want kids to be able to do. And so each one of our units is broken down into that part. All of our electives to all of our core subjects, we want to be able to tell you as a parent, this is what your kid knows. And then this is what your kid's able to do with what it is that they know. And so, there's a lot out there about the myth of average, and the way that we've always graded doesn't always add up. And a lot of times we penalize kids for truly learning. So you take that first grade, right, at the beginning of a 6 weeks, and you make a 60 or a 70 on it because guess what? You'd never seen this stuff before. And then all of a sudden at the end of the 6 weeks, you're at an A. Well, what should be on your report card? In our belief system, the A should be on your report card because you've actually learned. And what we do in education a lot is we reward the kid that's already got the A, and we don't reward the kid that is doing true learning. And
not the one who worked the hardest.
Right. And so we want to
change the hardest.
Yeah, the growth, right? And that's what, for years, the growth mindset has been the conversation, and we want that growth. And we want those habits to be there. So we have our first progress report coming up. Our facilitators will be sitting down and going through and providing individual information and feedback to parents of saying, hey, right now your kid's at a 2. In order for them to get to a 3 or a 4, this is what they need to be able to do in order to get there. And then that gives the ownership back to the families so that they can help and support. And they're not just looking at something and saying, oh, you got an 83. What does that mean? They'll have true understanding of what it is that we're looking at. And then we'll also, for those of you that are purists, we will also provide a actual numerical grade because we're required to do so. We'll require that numerical grade, but it'll just be a transfer of, if it's a 3, it'll be somewhere in that D range. If it's a 4, it'll be somewhere in that A range. If it's a 1, it'll be somewhere in that C range. And if it's below that, right, then it'll be in that D or F range. So, but we're really excited. The conversations have been really good with students based off of that because they clearly know what their expectations are on the front end. And then the assignments that our facilitators have been given have really improved because they're doing it with an intentionality of not just filling time and space, but actually measuring what a kid knows and what a kid's able to do.
Right. It's interesting how, you were applying, research about, how to help kids grow, right? How to help them have the right mindset about what things are changeable, right? That through their hard work that they can make a difference. But as a open enrollment public charter school, that receives state funding, and Frank needs to work within the framework that TEA is providing. And like you said, as I observed this over the summer, like I would watch the news releases and watch guidance and these documents that would come from the TEA website, and I'd be like, okay, wow, this is different, or oh, they're still figuring this out, aren't they? This is a really unexpected situation. And I guess, like you said, that there's certain requirements you have to meet, but then there's other things that may change, right? Like they may, they're trying to figure out how to measure things that no one's really tried to measure this way before.
The attendance is really, it's going to be a conversation, and it's worth having. When we talked in the summer, and I don't think it was on the meeting, I think it was on the side chat, but I would really love for us to be able to give options to families going forward, and not just because of a pandemic, right? Because we still have different reasons that come up. But they're going to have to figure out the attendance piece, because you can really lose your focus if you start tracking the attendance 100%. That becomes your main focus instead of instruction, right? And that's one of the things I want to highlight, because I know people will sit there and say, hey, flexibility is great, but can you really do what it is that you're saying that you're going to do? One of the things that, we've been blessed with is the stories on social media haven't been our story. We've had kids on the first couple of days that couldn't log in. But if you go to any school in person, you're going to have that take place, right? Yeah, there was some chaos with schedules and different things along those lines. But again, every school has that at the beginning of the year. And so we have really transitioned well into the remote side of it. And we know we're going to be able to transition into the face-to-face side because of our design system. And so the way we go about it is we design for the edges. So we know we're going to have kids that are going to be remote. So we're going to design first there, and then we'll start to take care of those as we get into the face-to-face and what we're naturally known for, right? And so by doing that, we are able to support all students. We're able to make sure that our curriculum is accessible to all students, and then we're able to make sure that all students are going to be successful. And then the other thing, we have a great, not just we have an amazing group of facilitators, but we also have a great group of parents that have really bought into the idea of being problem solvers. So when something comes up, instead of focusing on it's the end of the world, it's, hey, here's this issue. How do we solve this issue? How do we make this issue better? And again, our family atmosphere really allows for us to do that and do it well.
Yeah, yeah. That's that's really when there's a sense of teamwork among like the facilitators and the parents and the students, that's when things really work the best. Are there aspects about no, I mean I encourage any viewers to click through, like go to the blog post and look at the plan, but there's like those interesting, like on the last page there's a set of FAQs, and there's also sort of let's see which page, sort of a set of definitions, and that these I think add some specifics to what the on-campus experience will be like. So I was wondering if there's anything that you could think of like to highlight from that you feel like about the on-campus experience, like even like in spite of the pandemic, how to stay true to the mission and keep kids safe.
Yeah, so I think that's the key, right? Is our on-campus experience is going to be a true on-campus experience. That when kids walk in, are we going to have them check their temperature? We are. Are we going to require them to wear a mask if they're over the fourth grade and up? We are. Are we going to require them to wash their hands? We are. Are we going to do extra cleaning? We are. But we're also going to do a heck of a job to provide instruction, right? And we're going to make sure that we are focused on kids learning and growing and coming out of this with some sense of normalcy back into our society, back into our lives. And so what I really want to highlight is that our mission is not to come back and to babysit. Our mission is to come back and show why these facilitators that work extremely hard are valuable and why they're invaluable, and why, when they talk about, hey, we need to look at our health insurance, hey, we need to look at our salaries, we need to look at these different things. Like, this is an opportunity right now for us to show why that's the case. And yeah, there's a pandemic going right now, but every year educators put health risk, right? And they put their families at risk because they expose themselves to the flu, they expose themselves to colds, right? And this isn't new. But if we can't show now why we're valuable, why we need to do it, why does that actually benefit a kid for us to take that risk for them to come to school, we're not going to get a better opportunity to do that. And so we're extremely excited about starting that September 8th. If you do have a kid that's in middle school, we do have some spots still available, especially in sixth grade. I know people have been leery to move. We haven't seen that normal movement, and I don't think that's just with us. I think that's anywhere. We haven't seen that normal movement from that fifth to sixth grade because everybody wants to kind of stay where normalcy is. But if you're looking for a place that's going to be back face to face, if you're looking for a place that's going to be remote and they're going to do both of those well, give us a shot. Come by a tour, sit down with us, and see if you like what we have to say, and go from there.
Yeah, that's what we for SHR moms, like we're trying to keep families informed, and so that they know what the different options are out there. And we feel like there's now like an extra dimension to what we're trying to express, which is not just like this is what this school is about, but also this is how these schools are coping with the pandemic. These are how these schools are staying true to the mission. And I think in the best cases, you're seeing innovation come out of this, right? I'm assuming you were probably already working on things like the shift to the like mastery and communicating with families about the competencies and stuff, but it adds an extra push, I think, to to really focus on what's important. And that's what we're trying to feature, like what we think is innovative that schools are doing to really try to help kids in spite of the pandemic.
I think when crisis comes, right, it gives you an opportunity to really reflect, and it does one or two things. It shows you where your cracks are, and then it shows you where you have really strong foundation. And so, yeah, we were already looking at changing our, or adding an LMS for our school so we could communicate better with our
Right.
families. We were already looking at doing Facebook Lives more often. We were already looking at sending out more emails. We were already looking at going to standard base, right? There's a lot of things that we needed to do better that we acknowledged. But what this has shown us is by making that move, it's also allowed for us to transition better into a crisis situation. And so, and that's why, as long as we're constantly looking to improve, constantly looking to solve problems, I think we're seeing right now, no matter what situation's thrown at us, we're going to be okay, and ultimately better than okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think that um, that you and the facilitators are modeling that kind of adaptability, and that's preparing students for, not just this sort of artificial world of school or college, but to be able to also be adaptable and flexible and cope with the challenges that life is going to throw at them. So I hope that my kids come through this with a level of preparation that they might not have otherwise gotten, but by overcoming this adversity.
Yeah, that's the thing that, just if I could take a second and just talk to everybody, kind of more of just a broad education, right? Is right now everybody's in a learning system. And, one of the things that really speaks to my heart is having empathy for what we put kids through on a daily basis. And so when we look at how adults are responding to being asked how to maneuver some of these things and their panic that they're having, yet we ask kids to go to school every single day and do things that they're not comfortable with, right? And we ask them to maintain a positive attitude, and we ask them to do things exciting, right? And what we do is we ask kids to do some really hard things on a daily basis. And so what we do want to model is we want to model that learning is difficult. There's nowhere in there should learning be easy. We're asking you to do something that you've never done before. And so we as facilitators, we as educators, we want to model that. We want to show families that we don't have all the answers, but we're willing to learn how to get the answers. We're not going to do everything right every time, but we're going to get better the next time that we do it, right? And so if we could do that, and not to sound too corny cheesy, but if we could do that, right, the world would become a lot better place for us to expect the good out of people instead of always looking and try to find the negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I do what I do. It's that I hope that by helping children get a better education, that they're prepared to have brighter futures and to make our community, make this world better. And I feel like that all the individual schools like Anne Frank Inspire Academy are part of that effort. And so that's why our team works so hard to support the schools and get the word out to families and to give them hope that, maybe if their school experience wasn't what they wish it had been, that there's hope because there's so many more school options out there. And, I hope that by listening to this and reading the blog posts, or, things like the inquiry-based learning posts that you wrote over the summer, that families can read that and it can click with them, right? And they could say, yes, I want my kids to have this on-campus experience, or I want them to have this kind of remote learning experience. And they can, I'll pop up the web, they can go to the website, they can reach out to you guys, they can, set up a tour.
Yeah, go to the website to find out about it, and then come to school to belong, find joy, and be great, right? And that's what we want.
That's right. That's right. Belong, find joy, and be great. Well, I think that's a good note to close this out on. And this is such a complex subject, but I think we tried to distill it to some key points. So thank you for doing such a good job expressing, how Anne Frank is reimagining education even during the pandemic.
Well, again, I appreciate you allowing us to come on, and then also Inga, for having the platform. Right, you've done a great thing as far as just your Facebook page, allowing for parents to ask questions, for them to express frustrations, but also celebrations, right? And just giving people an opportunity to stay connected through this has been wonderful. So we appreciate you allowing them to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Our community will stay together and stay strong, even if it's somewhat virtual for now. All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care.